lot of nuts!
What up, hyenas, and welcome back to SumitoMedia. Today, we're gonna be sitting in the cuck chair. I'm gonna be doing a deep dive into what a cuckold is and how somehow this sexual terminology has found itself deeply embedded within meme culture here on the internet. And when I say we are gonna do a deep dive, I mainly mean me. You're just gonna be sitting in your chair watching while I do all the work. Hey, look at that, lesson one's already begun. A cuckold, by definition, is defined as by freaknastyterminology.org. That's not a real website. Don't Google that and get mad at me for it. A cuckold as a noun is a man whose wife is sexually unfaithful, regarded as an object of derision, or as a verb of a man to make another man a cuckold by having sexual relationships with his wife. Basically, if you are a cuckold, you are either somebody whose wife has cheated on him or somebody who enjoys the act of watching or thinking about your wife cheating on you or being unfaithful. The word cuckold does have a bit of an interesting etymology, although isn't actually pertinent to the modern way that the word cuckold is used online, but it's interesting, so I'm going to go over it anyway. The term cuckold from a few other languages comes from the cuckoo bird, which has a very distinct way of raising its young, where the female bird will actually lay its egg in another bird's nest rather than raising it on its own, hoping to trick this other random bird into raising its own bird, completely absolving itself of any sort of parental instincts, evidently. And this term has been gone on to coin the term cuckold in order to mean a man who unwillingly or unknowingly raises somebody else's child. That then gets extrapolated into a man whose wife unknowingly has sexual relations with another man. But the modern definition of a cuckold being somebody who enjoys thinking about or watching his love partner engage in sexual acts with another person is really just sort of dictated by pornography. In Justin Lee Miller's book, Tell Me What You Want, he speaks to the fact that in his research, about 45% of all men have shared an interest in the idea of cuckolding. And that is quite literally half of all men that took part in this survey. So it's safe to say that this has definitely gone from a taboo subject that was spoken about by like William Shakespeare in his plays, where people would unknowingly believe that their wife was being unfaithful to them, only to be confirmed that they were once they saw that their baby was not theirs, very much harping to the mirroring aspects of the cuckoo bird. But the modern interpretation of cuckolding as more of a sexual fetish has obviously been so because of pornography that has been made in order to validate people who are interested in the subject, as well as modern media also taking their own mainstream takes on this sexual fetish.
I want you to sleep with my wife again.
Just one thing.
What's that?
I'm gonna need some more breadsticks.
Macaroni Grill. Come arrange your cuckolding agreement here.
Okay, so cuckolding used to be this weird thing that most men would be ashamed of, in fact would be validity of you lacking any capability of being a man in some cases, and is now the hip new thing that all the Gen Zs are into, right, Sumito? No, that's not what I said at all. I'm starting to think you're not even listening to the words that are coming out of my mouth. Cuckolding is something that I think most people, if you're not into it, can sort of very easily vocalize why. However, there are a couple of similar, more mainstream sexual fetishes that get represented in internet culture and memes that I think some people do have a little bit more understanding to when it comes to fart fetishes or female domination, muscle mommies, feet, armpits. Hell, even your boy enjoys his G Fuel spit back into a cup by his wife. She has said no every single time that I've asked, but that's not going to stop me from asking. All of these things take their core from a sense of humiliation, a sense of embarrassment that you feel by this other person that results in a sense of sexual domination that turns you on. However, even amongst all of these things being humiliating, cuckolding still very specifically holds the absolute top spot as the most taboo, most black sheep of the sexual fetish community. And I think with a little bit of analysis, it makes a lot of sense why. The one thing that sets cuckolding apart from all of these other humiliation-themed memes that end up online is the fact that it includes another person stealing your woman from you. That's sort of the core principle. Whether you're into feet, armpits, or having your Starbucks order filled with breast milk by your local barista, the idea is that humiliation in these ways comes from somebody that you find sexually attractive, and it stops there. The fact that they themselves are willing to humiliate you shares a sense of companionship love, intimacy, an embarrassing amount of which, but you can imagine that kissing somebody's feet might be your way of showing your love for them. It's still this one-on-one monogamous connection. And in the society of which monogamy is most common in Western society, it's easy to see how cuckolding, the one of these fetishes that introduces another person, now turning a monogamous relationship into an open or polyamorous one, ends up being the black sheep fetish amongst the rest of them, as it has that one thing that most people can't relate to, which is loving your partner so much that you'd be willing to let them share these intimate sexual experiences with someone else. That's the disconnect that I think most people have. Sumito, does it really take any sort of explanation to explain why I wouldn't want my girlfriend or my wife to effectively be cheating on me? No, of course not. And trying to explain why cuckolding might be appealing to you to somebody else who isn't into it is an impossible task, much as the same with spit, armpits, muscle mommies, farts, and whatever else the internet might be into, furryism, whatever it is, right? If you're not part of the in-group, you're very distinctly part of the out-group, and trying to convert people from one side to the other is basically an impossible task. But with cuckolding, for whatever reason, that has not stopped people from trying. For example, the first, and I can't believe there's more than one, the first one of these cuckold explainer comics that we're going to take a look at is from like 15 years ago or something. It was from 8 years ago. That's nowhere near 15. It's by a comic artist by the name of Oh Joy Sex Toy, who makes these sex-positive explainer comics to try to explain sexual stuff in a visual format. This comic is titled, What the Fuck's a Cuck? And it basically attempts to do exactly that. Explain cuckolding to normies in a way that tries to get them to understand why somebody might enjoy the idea of their wife cheating on them, which I think you can already start to hear feels like a bit of an impossible task. This entire comic, which is like 6 panels long, depicts a number of different situations in which the cuckold by the name of Joe and his lady by the name of Kate enjoy having their sexual bedroom fulfillment with their bull by the name of Craig. And the entire, I don't know if this comic's like done a good job of trying to normalize cuckolding into the mainstream environment, but what it has done is made one of the oldest and funniest memes, which is this one panel in which it's literally the second panel of the comic, in which the main dude tries to explain that being a cuckold is, and then immediately gets interrupted by Craig, who goes, Joe, shut the fuck up and get the fuck out. I'm gonna fuck your wife now. This comic, I believe, was originally posted to Tumblr, given that this was 8 years ago, and was pretty much immediately ridiculed for a number of reasons. A, the internet's just not ready for cuckolding to be cool. I don't know if that was the goal here, but that was never gonna happen. B, it very much paints the cuckold in the story as a complete fucking loser, and Craig, the guy who's sleeping with his wife, is painted as like this cool dude who like has hobbies and a personality, and it just does not showcase any of the open relationship understanding and communication that should come with any sort of polyamorous relationship. KnowYourMeme.com also points to the fact that this comic was met with a number of people upset that it didn't address any of the internalized racism and homophobia that cuckoldry is typically accompanied with. I did a bit of research into what they mean by this, and basically the idea is that if you are seen as a cuckold, you are less of a man because your wife is cheating on you with another man, has a sense of homophobia because if there's any second man introduced into a relationship, it means less than it would for that first person, and the same cannot be said for somebody who has 2 women that he's sleeping with, so I believe that's what they mean by homophobia. And the racism that they talk about is typically within cuckolding pornography, where most of the time the person doing the cuckolding, the person who's sleeping with the wife, is depicted as like an alpha black man harping to stereotypes of like sexually aggressive African American porn actors or just people in general. Obviously, all stereotypes are harmful in their own way, and this is one of them. It's not actually super relevant to the memes that we're going to be taking a look at, but I felt the need to talk about it as it is part of the history of the word cuckold. And if this comic got ridiculed for not addressing it, I don't want to make the same mistake. Those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it, as they say. The Bike Cuck comic, probably the most famous if you were to Google cuck Cuckold Comics, don't do that unless you're ready for porn, by the way, is a redraw of a comic by Shen Comics where he talks about his bike getting stolen recently, but then trying to be optimistic about it, thinking that whoever stole his bike is probably happier to have it than he is sad to not have it. This grew in popularity both because of the absurdity of this way of thinking, as well as the fact that it was featured in the first ever meme review by PewDiePie, which also is, you know, kind of started my channel if you think about it in a way. My wife got fucked recently. I was pretty bummed about it, but I think whoever fucked her was more happy to get it in than I am sad to get cucked. So whatever. This resulted in Shen being referred to as bike cuck for the better part of probably several years, and having him take a subsequent break from Twitter. And again, this one doesn't really have a big space in the cuckold community as far as memes are concerned, but it is technically a cuck meme, and it was met with the same sort of backlash that basically all of these cuckold comics do get, which is that cuckolding gets painted in an absolutely negative light, because 9 times out of 10 it's in situations where the partner is unwilling, and the one other time out of 10 it's still just kind of cringe. Cuckolding isn't cool. You're not gonna make cuckolding cool. That's the one lesson you should take from this video. Another failed attempt at this one actually wasn't an attempt at trying to make cuckolding cool. It's just another comic that features a ridiculous panel depicting cuckolding. This one is called Peace Wolf Drama / Cuckies, which according to KnowYourMeme.com is a Twitter post by Peace Wolf, a furry, explaining why she divorced her husband Foxglove after experimenting with polyamory with furries Jason Fex and Japs Corner. The post was made in June 2023 and inspired reactions and memes, including a redraw format known as Cuckies. There's a lot going on in this. It's not even really a comic. It's like 6 pages of text explaining their relationship. It's basically a Google Docs where somebody explains, you know, why they don't like somebody or why they're breaking up, explaining their relationship, whatever. But it's got a few illustrations, one of which is exactly as I explained before, where the comic artist explains how she tried opening their relationship, and one of the panels is her sleeping with a furry depicting her feet and a tail, with her then boyfriend, husband, whomever, standing outside of the door, kneeling outside of the door while holding a fresh baking sheet of cookies, explaining why this panel is nicknamed Cuckies. Now, obviously, this panel in its own right is hilarious, even funnier given the context and the fact that there is this humiliating nature to depicting this individual in this way, harping to the same humiliation that a cuckold feels and or wants. You know, it just ties everything together. But one reoccurring thing that I think you guys are noticing here is that a number of these situations that depict cuckolding don't really seem to feel completely consensual. I mean, the idea of enjoying a cuckold relationship is the fact that you like the idea of being humiliated, that you're in control. You made a conscious, consensuous decision for your wife to be sleeping with these other people, but that's exactly the thing. The mainstream actual denotation of the word cuckolding leaves out a lot of the context of the way that it gets used on the modern internet. The reality is that most of the time that people are using the word cuck is not to describe somebody, but rather to insult them, implying that the cuckolding was non-consensual. It was basically just somebody cheating on you. The modern way that people use cuck online is to describe somebody who had been cheated on, which isn't entirely accurate, as cuckolding sort of implies consent when it comes to porn. Again, not exactly the case when we use it online, as we will go on to see. Idubbbz's cuckold arc somehow has embedded itself into the history of this word just because of how big of a story this was. According to KnowYourMeme.com, this happened 5 years ago. I could have sworn this happened 1 or 2 years ago. It's been that long. Anyway, Idubbbz, as you may know, or Ian online is known as Idubbbz, most notably known at the time for his Content Cop series, really sort of pioneering the commentary genre on YouTube, has a girlfriend by the name of Anissa, and Anissa at one point back in 2020 announced that she would be starting an OnlyFans, and her and Ian have been together for longer than most people have even known Ian as a YouTuber. And so a lot of people commented, wait, aren't you currently with Ian? Aren't you like married, or like you've been together forever? Like, how does he feel about this? And she stated that he was very supportive, leading to one of the first and biggest nails in the coffin of Idubbbz. At this point, I believe he was still sort of widely regarded as one of the kings of old YouTube. Being in commentary really is a bit of a double-edged sword, where you get to make fun of pretty much anybody that you want to on the internet, but the second anybody finds a chip in your armor, a weak spot, you've now garnered an audience of people who spend their time ridiculing and making fun of others on the internet. You now just become another target, and that's sort of the situation that happened here. When Anissa announced that she would be starting an OnlyFans and selling, presumably, nude pictures of herself online, all of the memes of Idubbbz being a cuckold, somebody who has already been ridiculed for sort of just submitting and letting his girlfriend run his life, do whatever, and just do whatever she says, now seems to be in a position where he kind of has to be okay with this decision that she's made, resulting in everybody calling him a cuck. This is very interesting because it does show a little bit of a shift from the pre-digital age to the modern digital age. Not to get too analytical, because I'm not a sexologist, I'm a memeologist, but think about it for a second. In previous medieval times, when Shakespeare wrote about what a cuckold was, it was very specifically a woman being unfaithful with another man. Physically, in fact, quite literally bearing another man's child. Move into the digital age of pornography, and the sexual fetish has now become more of a sexual fetish, one where you watch, enjoy the idea of your woman being unfaithful with another man. But in the modern era, women are able to share their bodies, their intimate parts that most men would only dream of seeing before the internet was a thing, online through websites like OnlyFans. So, like, what really dictates the difference between a pre-digital cuckold and a post-digital cuckold? If we are in an era where women share pictures of themselves all over the internet anyway, should the pictures that are of you naked only be saved for your husband? And if so, or if not, does that make your husband a cuckold? There's no sex taking place. It's just posting nude images online. Now, they are of a sexual nature, but like, what does that mean? Oh, people jack off to them? If they jack off to your girlfriend's pictures when they're not naked, does that make you a cuckold? You know what I mean? It raises some questions. That's all I'm saying. Bold statement here, right? I'm not a linguistic. It's hard for me to like properly analyze the trends of the use of the word cuckold pre and post Idubbbz, right? But I have to imagine with like Twitter trending with Idubbbz as a cuck, definitely shifted the word cuckold from a little bit of a obscurity into a proper mainstream meme. I mean, people who don't even enjoy memes, I mean, if you've watched YouTube, you've probably watched Idubbbz. Even if you don't watch Idubbbz, you probably saw the drama with Idubbbz when Anissa first dropped her OnlyFans. Idubbbz would then go on to release a video that would get millions of views defending her decision and online pornography in general, while wearing a beanie and looking like as much of a cuck simp as people could have wanted to make more memes out of him. I would argue that Ian's entire drama around Anissa's OnlyFans definitely shifted the needle a little bit in the word cuckold being introduced into some of the further memes we're going to take a look at now. Welcome to the cuck chair. It's a chair. That's about it. No, but the original image that started to garner popularity, despite the fact that Know Your Meme states that the term cuck chair has been used on Tumblr as early as 2014, it really started to garner some popularity as the cuck chair meme in 2019 and then being continued to be satirized into late 2022. The original image was basically this, with the caption that states, "Every hotel got the cuck chair." The idea that one single solitary chair in a hotel room is a teeny bit suspicious. I mean, if the bed sleeps two, there should be two chairs, and then the chairs also seat two. But if there's only one chair, a relatively nice, lavish one, relatively comfortable, one you could sit in for a while, it's a little bit weird for there to be only one chair facing the bed. It's almost as if the hotel is encouraging a third person to be sitting in the chair watching two people on a bed. And now what does that remind us of? Oh, right, this must be the cuck chair, for where the cuck will sit when he watches the cuckolding happen. That makes sense. I really like the cuck chair meme. I really do. I feel like it's a nice evolution of taking this more historical, significant terminology that's been used in so many ways inappropriately, in ways that almost seem forced onto the viewer, into one that feels a lot more natural as far as meme evolution goes. A lot of hotels do randomly have a single chair that faces the bed that you could dub the cuck chair. A number of people have made memes ranking cuck chairs in hotel rooms, but not just because it has numbers of variations to it, also because I feel like it starts to be a variation of the term cuckold that is more appropriately used in its definition. Too often, cuckolding just becomes synonymous with infidelity, cheating. Oh, your girl cheated on you and you didn't know about it? She was just unfaithful to you? That makes you a cuckold. By the strictest definition, sure, but if you weren't in the room encouraging it or getting gratification out of watching it or the idea of it, you're not really a cuckold. You kind of just got cheated on. Versus the cuck chair being a part of the environment in a hotel room. Well, this took planning, a credit card, a deposit perhaps. Everybody had to be in the room together. This is a consensual use of the term cuckold, and in my opinion, a more appropriate use of the word cuckold. You use that cuck chair, bro. I absolutely lost my shit when I bumped into the following image with the following caption in Dutch on my timeline. I really appreciate those Nordic Germanic languages where like it's just enough English that if you read it out loud, despite being in another language, you get the meaning out of. Now, this is a picture of a seat on like a bus or a subway system, but it's a standalone individual seat. It is probably for handicapped individuals, people who need more room, or maybe they just put this seat on a side where they didn't have room for two, but a situation where there's only one chair, where a lot of the times there are two chairs, you could call a cuck chair, right? But this caption in Dutch, which reads, "Yes, de cuckstoel in nog vril," a Dutch version of somebody referring to something as a cuck chair, this translates to "yes, the cuck chair is available," is hilarious because like I didn't need to translate that for you. You knew what this said even if you don't speak Dutch. The languages are so hilarious. And then there's this one. It's got edited shit on the cuckstool. Oh, nie leman poepen scharten op de cuckstoel. What do we think it says, hyenas? Give me your first guess. And then we're on what I can only imagine is like the Herman Miller website. No, this isn't even a chair. This is a metro chair. This is 4 subways and trains. Yes, de cuckstoel is nog de koop. I assume that means still in stock. Does any good meme exist without being soy jacked? I would argue maybe, but that's a video for another time. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Cuckjack is exactly as it seems. It is a Wojak template in a pair of glasses just to make him seem like a bit more of a cuckold, sitting in a cuck chair, as is standard procedure, while watching his wife, girlfriend, or whomever, ironically not wife Jack in this situation, I guess she didn't have as many legs as we thought she would. Arachnid wife Jack, by the way, for you arachnid furry artists out there. Watching his wife embrace another man, all labeled with some level of betrayal, right? The first edition I saw was when FromSoft announced that Dark Souls or Soulsborne games, I think it might have been Bloodborne, was announced for the Nintendo Switch as like a launch title or something. And basically Sony was like, wait a second, isn't Bloodborne and Soulsborne games supposed to be a Sony exclusive thing? Not anymore. Fuck your exclusivity. What is monogamy anymore? Get cucked, idiot. Sneako's cuckold situation. Now, Sneako is a streamer, YouTuber, something. He makes content online, generally not really liked because of his extremist takes on basically everything. He's one of these people who really only makes content for the sense of sensationalism in an effort to garner clicks and views, doesn't hold any level of moral integrity that most people would respect, and as a result is more of a laughingstock on the internet than most people. He got prominently featured on a number of people's homepages because of an argument that he got into with Moist Critical over the fact that he defended the creative integrity of the Cuties movie, the softcore child pornography movie that most people have looked back on as a weird fucking time on the internet. But in one clip, he's on like an interview and he's basically talking about cuckolding, where he went to a sex party with his girlfriend and just watched his girlfriend have sex with another man, and basically talked about how he enjoyed the experience while everybody around him was sort of like, bro, you really let that happen? And it's clear that, like, he wasn't necessarily defending cuckoldism or talking about how it was great or whatever, but rather was kind of just coping with the fact that it happened, and as such has been labeled the internet's second biggest cuck, depending on who you ask, right next to Idubbbz. I would argue since his girlfriend actually slept with somebody, he would be the bigger cuck, but you know how memes work. Some of you might be wondering, does the infidelity work both ways? If a man were to sleep with another woman, while his wife or girlfriend watched him sleep with another woman, would that make her a cuckold? And the answer is not really. I don't really see people referring to female cuckolds in that way. Pornography refers to it as reverse cuckolding, when in reality it should just be cuckolding in the strictest definition. But I think because of the historic significance of cuckolding originally meaning a man raising another man's child unwillingly, that never really translated in the other way, obviously, because the woman is still the one giving birth. I believe, again, not a linguistics expert, just a memeologist. And that's my coverage on the history of the word cuckold and how it started to become implemented into meme culture today. Why did I make this video? No fucking idea. Just something that's been bouncing around in my head, and I felt the unending desire to put it into video form for you to watch. If you would like to see more videos of my thoughts put into .mp4 format, the subscribe button is right below. If you like this video, remember to hit like. It helps me out a ton, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Spisu.